Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. I am Steve and I'm with Pascal as usual. How's it going, Pascal?
Yeah, shitty day, but overall, I can't complain.
Well, there's always silver linings. I'm trying to think of a silver lining. You're talking to me now. It's all good.
Yeah, I mentioned shitty day, mate.
Oh, wait.
And you're implied in that one. No, totally not. I always do enjoy talking to you, mate.
So let's go over our weeks, I guess. We have also got questions through, and we appreciate that. Talked about it last time that we'll be emailing out requesting questions, because now we have a nice Google form where it's all kind of better managed, I guess. And we have had 7 questions, so thank you. But there's obviously many more of you who haven't signed up to our email list, and so you can ask the questions. So sign up. Like I said, there's some free stuff in there as well. And we're hopefully going to be using that email more so we can give you good stuff. And it's not going to be full of crap. You know what we're like. We don't like talking about too much shit and crap, just with Gabrielle now and then. So anyway, how is your week going, Pascal? I know today's been not the best of days. How's the week going? I know I've seen your scale weight the last few days has just been dropping, which is super exciting. Yeah,
so I think now that you mentioned that, there are some really good things, or some good things have happened this week, and that is due to the scale weight readings. It comes down. Last week I was still coming out of the diet break, and I was saying like, okay, still sitting around 85 kilograms, doesn't really get down as I would like to, and now after a couple of days I hit actually new lows. I'm back to being a little bit more busier, which helps with not being as food focused, because I have to say that after a diet break I'm always having the hardest time because you had just a slight or small glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel, and let me put it this way. Like Adam and Eve, you had a bite of the apple, and now you're just like, okay, I want to eat the entire thing, right? And that is, for me, a diet break. For me, it's always a little bit harder. I know that for you always, enjoy them, but is that the right thing to say? You embrace them?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's been a while since I've really done a proper one, but I don't remember them being as... Yeah, I don't remember struggling. I think generally view them as more of a positive thing, and you view them as more of a, do I have to thing?
Yeah, so when I'm transitioning into a diet break, I'm always struggling with accepting that you want to take a diet break. And then when I'm transitioning out, it's always like, oh God, now that I ate a little bit more again, I don't want to go back into a caloric deficit. But I stick to the plan. Only 3 more weeks to go. 3 more weeks to go, and the cut is going well. I mean, I can't complain. I'm really happy with how things are going on that front. And now today I couldn't train because I was stupid enough to forget my membership card in my other apartment. Sounds so weird, as if I'm super rich and have many houses or so. But as you guys know, this is my apartment in Potsdam here, right? And I forgot my membership card, so couldn't train today, can't train tomorrow, because at the times I want to train, no staff is around. So my problem. But anyway, that's life, right? It's a forced rest day, so to speak. And other than that, in regards to the rest of my life, still busy, still hustling. I hate that term, mate. I hate that. It's just so wrong. Totally. Still working, and still a little bit overwhelmed by studying and all that kind of stuff, because we've talked about it offline. You are always being brought into a position where you realize what you don't know, and it's just like, okay, you know nothing about this topic, and now you have to learn about it, Right. And it's just like, I don't know, it's a feeling I don't really like, but I know that it's necessary to actually make improvements and learn. And that's something we've been talking about over the past couple of months, maybe even the entire time, like failing and feeling like you know nothing is actually a good thing, because out of negative experiences, positive experiences happen or are being created. And yeah, that just happened the entire week. And yeah, I don't know, I'm really just like in a fluctuation of emotional states right now,
I guess,
going from one extreme to the next.
What's the saying? Pressure builds diamonds. So you're becoming a diamond, Pascal.
I hope so. I mean, otherwise, what else would come out of it then? What's the alternative?
Just shit rock. I don't know. But no, I think it's just, I don't know, people compare it to whenever you're changing into a new phase. Change is just uncomfortable. We like our routine, we like our habits.
Absolutely.
So it's just, you're kind of getting your feet, kind of trying to find your feet with everything in it. I can see how that's really difficult.
Yeah, and I think that because it's such a challenge for me now, and I don't think that I'm the only one who feels like that. I think many people go through it, right? And because it's so overwhelming, I know that my professor in botanic said that 80% for the first exams will not make it. All right, and just hearing that is crazy. But also another thing he mentioned, like, okay, half of the people who are here will not be here anymore in 6 months from now, which is also crazy, right? And I think that there's something to it, because I thought sometimes already, like, how the hell am I supposed to actually go through this and be able to actually, I don't know, make an exam and be ready for an exam, because it's so much stuff I need to learn. And I think for many people, then it comes to the time where they are just like quitting. And I don't want to say quitting, because quitting always, many people imply something negative with that. And that's not what I'm saying, but they decide to stop because it's too overwhelming for them. And then the question always becomes in that situation, what are you willing to endure now to get something out in the long term or at a later moment? And this is basically where you can look at bodybuilding. And this is something I always remind myself right now, because I'm willing to put in the work and effort now to actually achieve something in like 5 years or 10 years. Right, the longevity aspect and the long-term approach and the putting the what's it called again? The gratitude, blah blah. The instant gratification on a back burner to then get actually something in the long term, right? And I know that many people can't do that and aren't willing to do that, because it's too overwhelming at first, and the instant gratification isn't there, and not by a long shot, because I feel like a stupid piece of shit right now. Like, truly, I feel like so stupid. But when you really think about it, isn't that a beauty and a gift, that someone presents you the things you don't know?
That's where the opportunity is. Because if you're just seeing everything you know all the time, that's always the way with, if I ever pick up clients who challenge me, situations that challenge me, that's the stuff that I really enjoy. And whilst I enjoy like clients just doing what they need to do and everything coming along as we'd like, the true pleasure in coaching is when there's like a scenario where you're just like, I really don't know what I should do in this situation. So you have to trial things. You have to then see feedback and see what will work. Because that's the opportunity. That's where opportunity lies, is not in what you know. So I like the reflection on bodybuilding as well, because it was reminding me of also like it's your choice to do this, especially for yourself. Like you're choosing to do this path, and you need a strong enough why and realistic expectations. And it sounds like those are things you've probably developed through.
Totally. And this is always something I preach to other people as well when it comes to like what bodybuilding has taught me, that patience and to put in the work and effort and don't expect immediate results. So when I was younger, I think that I was so much more impatient. I think that's normal, right? But I think that bodybuilding has taught me a lot, which is not specifically just like training and nutrition.
I mean, I always say this is a sport of delayed gratification. It's literally what it is. The best bodybuilders are the ones who have been doing it consistently into their like 40s and they're 40, 45 years old. They're like the true, like they're the guys who are seriously dense, ridiculously lean, like lines all over their glutes and hamstrings. They're the guys I'm just like, whoa, blown back by. Yeah. And you only get there by being consistent, having that delayed gratification, and adhering and doing your best when you can.
Funny enough, there was a YouTube comment by Anton. Anton, if you listen to this now, shout out to you, who from I think the last episode or so where we've talked about my current situation and stuff like that. And it just made me think how different our lives now are. Because at a point, we basically had the same kind of structure and routine. We were only like online personal trainers, had plenty of time to actually do our training as well, right? Committed like maybe even two a day training sessions. And now it completely changed. I would say that I have now a son. I'm going to university. I'm not able to train twice daily at all. My sleep, needs to take a back seat as well. And right now, it seems like when we are talking to each other via voice messages over on WhatsApp, you're mostly talking about your training, right? And I'm really appreciative of that, hearing how well you're doing and how analytical you are with your own approach. It's just like you are committing everything right now to your training. And I can't really wholeheartedly say that this is the case for me. It's just like when Anton brought up that comment, I was just like, oh yeah, that's actually
a lot has changed in your life. Whereas I've just stayed Steve the bodybuilder. Nothing. I've not got any kids here. I've not got any university going on. I
think you got even deeper into bodybuilding than ever before.
I think potentially. I'm falling more and more in love with it. I think that's partly because, I think I'm just understanding myself and my body more, and respecting just being, I think I'm more trusting in myself, in my decision making, in the process, and not getting so kind of set back by different views or minutia, and just I'm in a good flow state. And I think I said this to you actually. It's kind of like when that wave is strong, when you're riding it and things are going how you want them to, like ride it. And for me right now, bodybuilding, that wave is going really well. So I'm riding it. I'm putting everything into it because I know there's going to be a time where, I don't know, there might be a kid around the corner somewhere. There might be some further things that I want to do with the business or education or buying a house, wherever there might be in future. I might not be able to ride this wave. So I'm going to make the most progress in the time I can. And right now it's really coming along. So it's super exciting. But like you said, like these things don't last forever. And our lives are quite different at the moment.
Yeah, but I find it really interesting to see your progress from the outside, and also how much time and focus you put into your own progress and development. Because right now, I mean, I hear you talk on a daily basis, and I hear your thoughts, right? Because you're sharing them with me. And I learn a lot from it as well. And I do love seeing that, how analytical you are, how much you are reflecting upon yourself and what you've been doing over the past couple of weeks. And that just will kind of pay off in the future, I think, and especially for the next show.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't doubt that at all.
I'm so excited to potentially compete again. At the same time, it's scary because it's kind of like the off season's going so well. Why would I ever want to stop growing? And like maybe I don't ever want to compete again. I don't know. It's funny.
Forever bulk.
It's funny. You see people compete and you see the season go on and you get like super jealous because you're like, oh, people are stepping on stage and I want to do it. But then you see the aftermath and there's always shit in the aftermath. There's people who have fallen in love with it and they can't wait to step on stage again, and that's really cool. But then there's people who get like shat out on the other side, who are like, first season, never competing again. It was great whilst it lasted, but it took over my life. And I'm always upset to see these stories, and they almost worry me because I'm like, I don't want this to happen to me. And I know from experience how to control that and make sure it doesn't happen. But life changes. Like you said, you've now got the extra consideration of family, and that is another shit in the works, which you have to consider when you're competing. So when I see these people who are like, my season's done, never going to compete again, I'm like, that is sad to me, because part of me is like, what if like I ever experienced that? That'd be quite a sad thing to come out with. And I don't look down upon these people. I respect that they don't want to compete again, because maybe it isn't worth it to them. But it's just kind of like, it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Well, competing isn't like the be all and end all. Off season's fucking great as well. So
yeah, and this is actually something I'm really afraid of, that this will happen to me, because so much is going on in my life, and that because it's then such a hard procedure, possibly, that I'm losing the love for it. I don't know if that ever will occur or happen. If you know that this is possibly or that this is an alternative or an option that can arise when you are when you are competing. But yeah, of course, I'm afraid that something like this could actually have a negative impact on the way I look at training, whether I'm losing the passion for it because maybe it was such a struggle. I don't know, but I'm sure this is something, when you love something, right, then of course you are thinking about it, or things that could possibly happen that you will lose that. It's just natural.
And I think with some of these guys, potentially they kind of retire for the time being, but they can always come back. You see people retire, they come back.
And you can always still bodybuild. You don't have to step on stage to be a bodybuilder, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's true. It's the pursuit of bodybuilding is very much off the stage, not on the stage, because you're not building anything whilst you're in that process. No. You're building a poor relationship with your physique and food. That's all you're building.
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess that was it was actually a good chat, but I guess briefly to go over my end, not a lot has changed. Like we kind of updated there, putting a lot into trying to be the best bodybuilder I can be at the moment, whilst enjoying life and building the business. I'm really enjoying at the moment, particularly interacting with people over Instagram has been really nice. There's been some really good interactions I've had over there, and I feel like I'm having more of a positive impact than ever, being able to reach a lot more people, which is really cool. And it's only been cemented by talking to recent podcast, what are they called? Interviewees, Ryan Doris, for example, and Leah Carr. Really good talking to them, and just because they're obviously coaches themselves and competitors themselves, and in some ways quite similar to me in what they're doing. So it's really good hearing them talk positively about what Revive Stronger are doing, the information we're putting out. So it's made me fall in love with that process a little bit more as well. Mm-hmm. And people keep asking me, like, how do you like deadlifts? Because this was my third session doing deadlifts. And the report is, I don't really want to reveal too much because it's still way too soon to really say anything. They're still beating the absolute shit out of me. Today, I can just feel my whole lower back all around there is just like, it's all under all kinds of pain. I'm still not completely convinced by the difficulty and the fact that they're really hard and the fact that they're making me tired and sore in certain places that I haven't felt before is worth it and worth the trade-off. Like, I love feeling strong. I love that I can pull a lot of weight. It's cool that I'm feeling like some tiredness and soreness in some areas. But is that truthfully building more muscle? I'm skeptical of it. So I'll see. But like, the progress I had without deadlifts in the program was tremendous. So I'm still just, and it's like, we know you can build muscle and build strength and do like a power building program, but do you need to do the low volume, the heavy weights to build muscle? No. So why not use the lighter ones and do more volume that potentially is going to build more muscle? It's kind of like, hey, oh yeah, maybe I don't need to beat the shit out of myself and do a deadlift, and I can get more out of other variants. So I'm still not entirely convinced. I'm still like, I'm not sure. So we'll see. I do know that week 1, I did 2 sets. Last week was 2 sets. Today I did 3 sets. And I moved from 180 to 185 to 190 this week. But on that 3rd set, there was no way I could do 190 kilos for a 3rd set for any sort of decent amount of reps. I was recovered enough to do some more work, that's for sure. But I had to lower do a down set that I didn't necessarily program in. I reduced the load by 10%, which is actually 20 kilos basically. And even that was hard. It's just like, deadlifts are just deadly. I just can't get a lot of volume out on them. They just beat the shit out of me. So I don't know if that's brought any thoughts into your mind.
Yeah, just an analogy.
Yes.
And that is, I don't know which movie it is, but it is like a group of guys and you want to be part of that group. So you are going there, and the way you are actually becoming a part of that group is being beat up by them. You have to be smashed, and they are just beating the living shit out of you. And if you then after that still want to be a part of that club, you are more than welcome. I don't know. This was the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, it's just
like 5 guys around you just kicking the living shit out of you.
That is, deadlifts just do that. But I'm really glad I'm experimenting with it, because I hadn't done them in a long time, and I have done posts and I have had thoughts about it, and there's been discussions about deadlifts for hypertrophy. So lots of people are proponents, some people aren't, and I'm kind of thinking what I've said is more at the forefront of my mind, and I agree with it probably more wholeheartedly after doing it so far. Anyway, that's where I'm at the moment. So I'm thinking, for someone who's decently strong at deadlifts like you and myself, they're not worth the ratio of fatigue to hypertrophic reward. I'm not seeing it.
I do remember the time when I was still training for powerlifting, and I did something like 190 for 6 repetitions and stuff. Holy fuck. It's funny because Katie just massaged me last time, and that was on my lower back. And my lower back, always in the past, when you put some pressure on it, I could even do it myself. There was always like, oh God, that feels good, right? Because it was always so tender to touch, because it was so tight all the time, right? And now it's actually decent. It's not really overly stimulated, the lower body. The lower back. The lower body is probably stimulated by massaging.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a strange exercise, because I think like people really like it because there's a big bang for your buck, but then there becomes a point that because it's so systemically fatiguing, it's attacking everything. It's like, where the fuck do you put it? And then the fatigue it generates, because you can be so strong at it, is so high that it just becomes the actual strength, the amount of strength you have on it becomes a burden. At first it becomes like a bonus. It's really cool that you're strong at things, and then it's like, shit, I wish I could get the same fatigue from this with like 100 kilos.
That's why I'm still programming deadlifts, even though that I'm right now not doing any kind of conventional deadlifts or true deadlifts from the floors, just like variations such as stiff leg deadlifts. But this is the reason you brought up there, why I'm still programming it for certain clients.
Yes, same as.
Because I want them to become stronger, right? And I see the value in doing the deadlifts as a fundamentally core exercise for them, because they are not moving like 200 kilograms, and they still can recover quite well from doing repetition deadlifts from the floor and stuff. So yeah, I see the value in them still, but you have to use them intelligently, especially the stronger you're getting.
And I think for me, it's just basically as soon as I've deadlifted, I ain't got much left in me. I have not got much left of anything else. So it's an absolute pleasure.
Sets.
Yeah, I mean,
God damn, no, you're just leaving.
It's such a pleasure to have just deadlifts and then Romanian deadlifts, and then there's no quad work until like 4 or 5 hours later. Like I couldn't imagine doing them again. But yeah, that's so far the experience with that. Scale weight, I'm kind of not really taking much notice of it because it's the first couple of weeks. I'll start taking more notice now that water weight and everything is settled. But I think my lowest weigh-in from the mini cut was like 185 or so, something like that. And now I'm up to like 188. I imagine to rebound like 4 or 5 pounds of just food and all that stuff. And yeah, my body is like, especially my lower body recently, really my lower body has just felt fairly constant soreness for a while. So I'm thinking I maybe have slightly overshot the amount of volume that I've been doing with it. So I'm this next week for sure not pushing things like I have been, because things have literally been like on the cusp of just not recovered enough. Like today I was like, again, tomorrow I know I'd be fresh for lower body. And today I was kind of like, I'm just like on the cusp of, if I was a little bit sore, there just wouldn't be productive training. But at the moment it's okay. But I want to be a little bit more recovered than what I have been. It's a bit too close for my liking.
Totally.
So I don't know if we want to cover questions. I don't know if you had one from YouTube first.
Yeah, let's do that one first. And that is from the Improvement Season podcast episode 76 from Optimal Natural Bodybuilding.
Sounds like someone we should follow.
Yeah, now I found this to be a good question. That's why I want to bring it up now. Can you please talk about changing calories on the amount of steps you do on a given day? So he brings up an example, but we don't have to cover that because I think that the question is quite obvious, right? So are you adjusting your calories based on your daily step count or activity?
So I don't know if you want, I can attack it.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
This happens to me quite a lot, actually. Like it just, obviously he wasn't giving an example, but this happens to me regularly because on the weekends I tend to do much more steps because I'm not working. Whereas during the week, my steps are really, really regular. I basically hit the same every single day. I don't tend to change anything, really, because there's so much going on with the human body that there's normally compensatory mechanisms that come into play with these sort of things. If you do 5,000 extra steps and you burn maybe an extra, 200 calories during that time, maybe you're just then 200 calories lazier during the day or the following days. The body's really good at keeping this kind of homeostasis of energy output. Now, I have had clients where they've gone, I don't know, like on a hike, and like they've been hiking like the entire day and they rack up like horrendous step counts, like 50,000. And I'm just like, right, for every however many thousand extra steps you do, consume an amount of extra calories. Those for me make a little bit more sense because that's a big increase. That's extra activity. That's like doing an extra sport outside of what you're already doing. But for just like day to day extra walking around places, I'm not too worried. And normally when people are doing that, they're normally out and about. There's normally more food consumed that's potentially like guesstimated from restaurants. You could quite easily underestimate. These sort of things normally happen. I normally allow myself a little bit more flexibility in terms of tracking on those days as well. But for the most part, no, it's not something I manipulate as long as it's not too out of whack.
Do you have a general guideline of, let's say, per 5,000 steps extra, you are bumping it by?
I do. I don't know off the top of my head. I can't remember what it was. It was just like an average figure I found online. But I know for like, I actually don't know how many extra calories it would be. Just because there's also the fact that whilst you're walking, even if you were lying on the sofa, you're still burning calories. So that's the same for cardio. It's not like it's an extra netted amount. There's a some amount you have to take away. So it's not as much as people think. I think it's like 50 calories per like 1,000 steps or something, very small.
Yeah, no, absolutely the same. I've forgotten the number I'm always using. I think it was like per 2,500 steps you're taking 100 calories or 200 calories. I'm probably mixing up the numbers now, and that's why I brought up the 5,000 number, because I'm not entirely certain whether it was 2,500 and then 100 calories or 5,000 and something like 100 calories, or the other way around, 2,500 steps and then 200 calories.
5,200 sounds to me ballpark a low estimated number. But they're decent.
It's something that I'm hardly ever using. That's why I don't really have it in the back of my mind, because it's absolutely the same as you. And I'm quite happy that we have the same opinion on that one. Because, when people are asking me like, okay, shit, here on Saturday, I was like having double the amount of steps, but it was only one single day, right? Probably not that much has changed. And even if you were to expend a little bit more calories, this is like you said, the body is really good at compensating. And even if you think that you don't compensate, there are a lot of things that are truly happening. This is also what you can see with competitors or people that are getting really, really lean. They think that everything stayed the same, right, with their activity levels throughout the day. But so many subconscious things are just away. Like we always bring up the fidgeting aspect, or now I'm standing. You're not standing anymore, but you're sitting. It isn't a lot you're expending in comparison with each other, but it adds up over time, right? And the same applies there. Only because you are a little bit more active on one day doesn't mean that you are that you earned like 200 calories more or so.
And I'm going to get an IG worthy quote: trying to match your daily energy expenditure to your daily calorie intake is a fool's errand. Something like that. That is like
something like that.
It's I'd hate to see people try and do it, because it's going to really cause you a lot of anxiety and stress. You're going to try and hit step counts, all of this sort of thing. So if you just have a general weekly average that you try and hit around, I think that's fine. I think that's cool. But if you get too caught up on steps, give it a break for a while, because it's just not worth it. Because I do have people who, you could be cleaning the house for the entire day, rack up 1,000 steps. You've done barely anything, right? But you've got all that extra neat that you've done by cleaning and doing things. So there's more to it than just a single step count. But please don't try and match calorie intake to an exact energy output, because it will not work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that just brings up the thing about Fitbits, for example. Because I've seen it a couple of times that people eat the amount that their Fitbit actually spits out.
Scary.
And then they are wondering why they are getting fat. Because it's only an estimation. It doesn't really truly individualize or monitor everything in your entire life, right? And then eating the calories that it displays, holy shit, it can be then when you're really, really active that it shows you like, okay, 6,000 calories here today. And you're eating then 6,000 calories, even though that probably, it's what we've talked about, the body adjusted a little bit already on an acute sense and compensates somewhere else. And also the same applies to something like MyFitnessPal, when people are tracking their energy output. So things like walking, things like training, that they are logging it as well, because this calculates into your macros on that day or daily energy expenditure and subtracts what you've just expended there, right? And then they are eating also maybe way over what they actually did, or when they're cutting, they think that they are in a bigger deficit than they actually are.
This is just like why calorie calculations, they're fine as a starting point, but just monitor your body weight, monitor how many calories you're consuming, and eventually you'll see some trends and things going on that you can then change and adjust appropriately. So,
but I think it was a really good question,
cool
because
question.
It comes up all the time, and I had so many clients actually who asked me that question about, okay, do you make up for it the next day or even on that day?
So I'm glad they can hopefully listen to this, or we just can refer them. So we can get to the questions that have come across via the email. So the first question is from Abdullah. I hope these are sent, like they look weird in this graph because people are like graphed by how many questions they've entered. So I'm hoping he's first on the graph. So I'm hoping the first question that's typed here is his. So if it's not Abdullah, then I apologize. So he has said, this is a long question. Maybe I should have read this beforehand. Finding the right volume / training progression. He said, I'm in a bit of a predicament. You always talk about grouping novice lifters, intermediate lifters, and advanced lifters. He said advanced leftovers. Sorry, that's hilarious. Advanced lifters into different categories in terms of training and volume, but I'm struggling to figure out exactly where I would lie. He said, here's the situation. I've been training for a good 4 years now, but I fucked myself from the start. I've spent most of that time making little to no progress, training with incredibly high volumes, following random bodybuilder workouts, constantly consuming vast amounts of insufficient calories, combined with participating in endurance sports like cross-country, swimming, all through high school. So 4 years of basically unproductive training. He said, it's safe to say I've missed out on a load of beginner gains, and he's stuck in a rut. Typically, you don't classify someone who's been training for a good 4 years as a beginner, but at the same time, I haven't made nearly as much progress to consider myself an intermediate. He said, in the past couple of months, I've increased my calorie intake and I've dedicated myself to losing my abs. But now, and trying to figure out sufficient training volume. Beginner workouts I found I've only lost weight on, but I am trying to figure out where the high volume end is too much for me. Any advice on how a beginner / intermediate, I have no fucking clue, type of lifter should attack their programming? He said, thanks a lot, guys. Your podcasts have really helped me learn to train and eat in a much healthier way. And I have to say your knowledge is invaluable. Keep up. P.S. I have also considered recently contacting you about coaching to help me learn how to properly train, but I've yet to turn 18. This kind of so you may have a potential inquirer soon. Right, Pascal, now sell us. That was a long-winded question. I apologize, guys.
Yeah. First and foremost, I want to say that I don't think that the volume requirements change that much. Yes, when you are absolutely a new beginner, you don't need much to grow, right? And you want to save it for a later moment. But when you are an early intermediate up to actually being advanced, I think that it will always probably stay around the same ballpark. So let's just throw it out somewhere in the range of 12 sets to 20 sets per body part per week. This is a normal figure, a general figure for most people that will work out just fine. Somewhere in that range, I think, is where many people will see most of their progress for the entire career. And I don't think that it will change that drastically from early intermediate to advanced, because you're getting stronger along the way. Your mind muscle connection is probably increasing as well. And we could always make the case for the metabolic disruption that comes along with that. Second of all, I think when we're then keeping that in mind, Steve and I just recently talked off air about it. About the volume landmarks, and people always trying to push to MRV. But what's the rush? And what's the trade-off that comes along with that, right? Because let's just say your genetic ceiling is achieved in 5 years from now, with an approach where you always push to your MRV and everything is just like perfectly fine. You would probably get there also when you take a less aggressive approach, always work a little bit under your MRV, maybe somewhere in that, let's say 12 to 20 set range, instead of always pushing from 12 to 20 in a 4-week accumulation phase, maybe always stay around 12 to 15. You will still make progress. You're still progressively overloading, hopefully. And maybe it takes you like 5.5 years now to get to your genetic ceiling. But with less fatigue accumulation, with less probably also wear and tear, with that being in conjunction with your other things in life as well, because when you properly overreach, you know that this can have quite an impact on the rest of your life, right? And you will still get there, but maybe a little bit, maybe it will take you a little bit longer. But I don't think that the discrepancy between always pushing them to MRV and always staying around MAV is that much. I would say it's a matter of maybe month at all, right? And in that case, as long as you're working in a good range with a solid training routine that suits you, keeps your fatigue management and stress management into consideration as well, and something that is kind of properly set up, but also something that you enjoy and you can stick to, you will make progress and you will see progress no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the driving home point of not worrying about whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, I think that's not something you necessarily need to even concern yourself about. The same recommendations sing true to all of those sort of people, that you need to train with a sufficient intensity, with sufficient volumes. Start off with the lower amount that Pascal talked about and see how you respond to that. And more than likely, you can find that there'll be a big range that you can land within and you'll see productive growth. And you see this with people all the time. There's people who train with low volumes and they see fine growth. There's people who train with much higher volumes, they see fine growth. Find an amount that is hard for you and like tough for you, and then make it a little bit harder over time. And I think you'll see fine results. What I would say is, as you're not even 18, I would assume and maybe wrongly assume that you don't have some big things in check. Like you talked about 4 years of kind of essentially fuck around-itis, which I kind of did. And I just would say, before you really consider too much about your volume that Pascal talked about, which I think is great and something you should come on to, really, and this is something that both me and Pascal are big on. And if you were to sign up for coaching, this is something that we would push on you in the nicest way possible. Your training quality is there. We would make sure you're doing the lifts with sufficient intensity, intent, and really good quality, because that is like the match to light the muscle gain fire, and volume is then the fuel for that fire, because you ain't going to be getting any fire, any muscle growth without that quality, and it's so important.
No, absolutely. And this is something I just wanted to talk about as well, like after you finished, but you summed it up quite well with, you've done too much other stuff. It wasn't specific enough. We're not saying that you need to be overly specific, but if you want to achieve or attain a certain physique, you need to actually have a little bit more focus on building that physique first. So it's like you said, you know it yourself. You actually brought up the points, right? You know it yourself. You did a lot of cardio beside that. Your nutrition wasn't good. You were mostly in a caloric deficit. No surprise that you don't really have, I would assume that you don't have that physique you would like to have, but this can come when you are prioritizing things and when you are actually, I don't know, setting maybe some things at the side, because maybe you enjoy running or swimming or so, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to just stop it all along, but maybe once again, just prioritize things and put it on the back burner. And that will then come when you have everything else like properly in check.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. We can get to the next question, which hopefully is from Brad Sturges. So Brad is an old friend of mine. He is an old client. So he has asked, and I hope you're well, Brad. Hopefully you're listening. I assume you are. Would like to know your thoughts on intuitive eating. He said, I actually had quite a few clients ask me about this recently as well. I don't know if you did, Pascal, because Eric Helms talked about it on the Team 3DMJ podcast. He said Eric Helms mentioned that it's something he believes most people should strive for, especially if you're not a competitive bodybuilder or looking to compete. He said, my concern is due to the high calorie density of foods and it being so easy to underestimate or overestimate, could be more in a surplus/deficit than you think.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that one because I did a podcast on German about that topic. And
Brad's
after
American.
that, yeah,
You can't just refer him down.
sorry. So we have to move on to the next question. No, but after that, I also talked with a friend of ours, Samia, who looked into that.
Australian, sorry. I just wanted to correct myself. He's Australian.
Okay. Fucking cunt.
Sick cunt, mate.
She because I always looked at intuitive eating the way we actually think what intuitive eating is, and we don't really, or most people don't really know the origin of it. The origin comes from 2 doctors or so, or 2 researchers, and basically they've written a book about it, and that is mindful eating, what they are describing there. But the term intuitive eating, when you really take the term intuitive, is making decisions based on your emotions without any rationality to it, right? So pure decisions on emotions, which is, of course, never a good thing when it comes to nutrition, because we are living in a society where food is available around every corner. It is as palatable as it's never been before. Thus, when you only act by your emotions, nothing good will come out of that. There always needs to be a rational part in that as well. Thus, I think that the mindful eating terminology is more the appropriate one. But when you keep in mind that the intuitive eating, as it's originated, is actually mindful eating, I think that might be something really good to strive for. Is it possible for everyone? I have my doubts, because we know that there are quite obese people out there who have no control about that anymore, because at some point the brain isn't working with you anymore, but is working against you, and your body takes over, right? So for a specific part of the population, I don't think that this is achievable. Maybe only with like special help in a psychological and lab setting or so, but nothing like, okay, yeah, I want to intuitively eat right now, I'm just reading that book and everything is fine. But yeah, once again, is it something to strive for? I think it might be a really good thing to strive for if we are talking about the intuitive eating approach from these 2 doctors, which I like to term mindful eating, because mindfulness implies emotional decisions with rationality as well.
Yeah, I think I wanted to see if the book was right on my bookshelf there, but I can't see it. I really enjoyed that book. I thought it was really, really well written, and I didn't really know what intuitive eating and things like this were, because they don't term it intuitive eating at all in that book. They do call it mindful, and there were so many things in there that when I was reading it, I wasn't taking it from the perspective of this is intuitive eating or this is the goal or anything like that. I was just looking at it and I was like, so much of this just reminds me of flexible dieting, as the original term was, in terms of like, you try and stick to your diet most of the time. If you slightly slip up, then it's okay. Like, eat when you're hungry to an extent, have some kind of good rules and structure in place, and you'll get to your goals. And this book it has loads of different scenarios, and it just makes you very aware of how you can quite easily overeat and how to tackle that. And I think if you were to get into the situation that the book gets you into, you could have a great relationship with food for the most part. But people think that's like I think people, when you think of intuitive eating, you almost think of it as just, you don't think about food, you just eat like whatever when you like. And that isn't what intuitive eating now is really the definition within the research. It is more so that mindful approach, which, like you said, I think is great. But I think when you think about it, it's not really that different to doing it all, but with a scale at the side. Like I in many scenarios, I can see how, I don't know, where I could do the mindful eating where I could be in a position where if I just had I could just have actually know how much rice I was having, for example, just by having a scale underneath, and I can just track that, and it wouldn't cause me a stress. So for me, I don't know if it's the long-term goal for me right now, as I am competing in bodybuilding and I want to be precise. And even for some of my clients, and we're working with clients and they want goals, like they want to achieve fat loss, they want to achieve muscle gain. And the quickest way and the best way to do that isn't probably through mindful eating. That's always going to be a more of a, like, you're not always completely sure about whether you've consumed, like Brad said, the exact right amount. Although there's still rules and guidelines in place and you can get pretty close probably. When we're working with clients and when they're with us, they want they want results kind of expedited. So when I'm working with people, I'm very on the side of, we can make it a goal and we can go down that route. But I just want to choose whatever's the least stressful route for you. And if having a scale there most of the time and tracking it is a small stress or doesn't really cause anything, then I'm not actually too worried about it, because the difference between that and then going just out and out mindful eating isn't that different, but that could actually cause a lot of anxiety and stress for someone, at least initially. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts on my end.
And I think there are so many things that you have to take into consideration there, but are more so context specific as always, but something like cultural aspects as well. Right. I think that when you are around family, let's just say a Mediterranean dinner party, right, goes for 3 to 4 hours, lots of food, wine, etc., pp. Right. It's probably pretty hard then to you are doing a mindful approach there, right? You are saying like, yeah, I can actually do that and I feel good with that, but where do you set yourself boundaries then? And is that already a limitation and that it goes against the mindful eating approach, right? Where does mindful eating begin and where does it end? Because I think that the lines between there are really fine and it's really hard to actually make the cut, I think, of where is it that tracking is not mindful eating, or where is it that just going overly flexible because you want to, you feel like it, but also you're making that rational decision of going down that path. Where does it end that this is not longer mindful eating as well? So I find it really, really hard to determine that and to put a stamp on it. And yeah, overall, I think, I don't know, the best approach would be probably to do something that keeps you sane. And even if that goes against the norm or what is deemed a normal, right? If that allows you to always stay on track and enjoy what you're doing, maybe it's all right. I don't know. If it's not clinically being negative or something.
Yeah, if it's not obviously something that's like, you should just not be doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
there's
like,
some things you can do in private that are obviously not right.
Yeah, just to bring that up, anorexic person who's justifying their behaviors and feel good after doing that, like being in that state right now. I mean, this is not what we are meaning, right? But yeah, you get the idea.
Cool. I think we have time to cover one more question.
Let's do that. And then I need to give my keyboard back.
Yes. So we have Griffin Young, and he has asked, what is your approach when it comes to chest training for women, specifically exercise selection and volume? Do you favor vertical pressing movements? Question, do you keep volume low to moderate? Does your approach change when they have silicone implants? Cheers. So I don't know if you have any...
Do you want to start this time, or should I just go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I actually don't know any girls who have implants. I know that's a really common thing in the US. I think that the last 2 Olympias, all the bikini competitors had implants. All of them. Yeah, I mean, when you really want to do that, it's absolutely fine. It's not I'm not the one who judges or something, but it's crazy to think that, right? So I can't really speak on that note or that end. The only thing I can say is that when you're not a figure athlete or a bodybuilder, but you are a bikini athlete, which most of the females are nowadays, well, at least a huge majority, I'm actually not programming any kind of direct chest training. Any kind of chest training unless they want to. And the only chest training that they receive is from crossover exercises, such as, I don't know, sometimes I'm doing a close grip bench press, but it's really primarily for the triceps and not with the intent of working their chest muscles, because all I want to create is that symmetry and that illusion. And for me, it's much more important to then have proper deltoids, right? Proper lats, stuff like that. And I rather spend the energy capacity, the systemic fatigue kind of stuff, right? More so towards these muscle groups instead of using a bench press or chest flies when there's no true point in doing so. I don't know. I don't know how you do things, Steve.
Yeah,
it's quite a good question.
Yeah,
actually.
It's something that I've considered more as I've been having more competitive bikini and like figure athletes, because in previous it was just they just wanted to get more muscular, get stronger, lose some weight. So it wasn't such a consideration. I needed to factor this in, but obviously there's a specificity there in that a lot of them are bikini that I coach or figure, and maybe they want to do one and then transition to the other. So you always have to consider that as a thing, because obviously then those muscle groups become more important. What for the silicone, that is an interesting question, because I'd have to have some thoughts on it. Like I'd have to think about my programming a bit, but something I think it's probably worthwhile having some pressing in there just to balance out all the pulling you're doing, because having a V-taper is an important thing for even a bikini athlete. Like having like some lats is pretty important. Having some sort of density within the back, especially for figure, this is a big deal. So you're going to have quite a lot of pulling within your workouts, which is good anyway, because if you're well endowed on the chest, it's going to nicely support you up, because you can quite often drag over, but still having some pressing there is going to help keep you in like a good balance. You don't want to have one really overdeveloped to the other. So I think it's nice having it there. But then again, a lot of my bikini and like physique or figure, they are interested in like powerlifting quite a lot of the time. So it's a good skill to have to be able to bench press, I think, a lot of the time. And that for that reason, they are kind of interested in it. I tend to prioritize vertical more often than horizontal, just because the upper chest is more an area that they would look better to develop. But like Pascal says, like the focus isn't really on those areas. You don't push tons of volume that way. You're more so focusing on the areas that are important. So like the glutes, the legs, those are getting a lot of volume. And you don't want the chest to take a huge contributor towards systemic fatigue. But most of the time, like they're not massively strong on that movement either. So it's just a nice skill to have. So I do like to program it, have some in there, but it's certainly not a priority. So it's something you do want to consider. You don't put it on such a front burner like you would for a powerlifter or a male competitor.
But that's why I think that when you're programming something like dips, for example, something like close grip bench, maybe even really high incline presses, which are mostly targeting the delts, but give a little bit of carryover to the chest, should be sufficient for these imbalances. I think that this will probably already sort your pulling movements out, because you don't really need that much to actually counteract that. So in that case, I think you don't primarily need to program that in. But if you want to actually do some chest training, I would actually put it at the end of your workout, behind the most important things, right? It might be counterintuitive for most people, right, to do them for example, after lateral raises or so. But these are the body parts I would actually focus more on and then put it on the back burner. It's the same when it comes to, I don't know, you did it a while, right, Steve, where you put squats behind the leg extensions, I think?
Yeah, like, although that was kind of as a strategy to pre-fatigue the quads.
Okay.
I did hack squats and then I did squats. I don't know how much I really enjoyed that since I didn't carry it over. But yeah, that was more of a scenario of trying to pre-fatigue the quads so that they'd work more in the squat. And then I'd actually have to use less weight in the squat, so it would create less systemic fatigue.
Okay, I just thought about the specialization of a weak body part or something you want to bring up. Of course, you then want to prioritize it, put it at the beginning of your workout, mostly as long as it doesn't accumulate that much fatigue and prevents you from properly overloading other body parts. I mean, something like if you decide to bring up your biceps, for example. Biceps, you can train pretty frequently. You can even do it as like I do with a lot of clients, do them on lower body days. And when you want to bring them up, maybe even put them before your squats. That might be feasible as well, right? And just something you can actually turn it the other way around as well. If you don't want to prioritize your chest muscles in that department, like let's say bikini athletes, put them on the back burner and put them towards the end of your workout because the other muscle groups are more important.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd say in addition is that, like you said, some people just enjoy it. And I think for a lot of bikini athletes and a lot of women, it's an area where you can still, because their systemic MRV, I think a lot of the time is quite big, especially for their upper body. And so you can almost put it in there just as like it's almost in some ways to keep them occupied and keep them enjoying like an element of their programming where they can't still do more legs and more glutes and more delts and things. And something I think, maybe I haven't considered it that much, but sometimes the big compounds are good for getting like a heavy load on some muscle groups, so like the triceps or something, but I don't know. It's something to consider though. I think we've covered some quite cool areas and things that I'm excited to travel down that route more as I become more expert in training with and coaching these more specific athletes who are looking to compete in that area, because a lot of the time we have Gen Pop who then want to transition, and then that's where you can get more specific with the training, because at the initial point you don't necessarily know.
Totally, and I just wanted to bring that up once again because not that anyone is getting offended by it or getting it the wrong way. I'm not judging anyone who gets implants. If you do it for whatever reason, I'm absolutely fine with that, right? Live and let live. Like, is that a saying?
I don't know. YOLO. You only live once.
YOLO. You only live once, and I'm a liberal, so you do whatever you want to do unless you harm someone around you or you unintentionally harm yourself.
Cool. So I think we will leave it there. We've still got some other questions that we can cover next time, so thank you for those. And I will do another email round to try and gather some more questions because they're always great to have.
Cool.
And we will catch you guys in future very shortly.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.